Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive? Today we're going to get our hands dirty with building iOS apps, specifically from an Ionic project. It's like taking your app idea and giving it a solid blueprint, and we've got an awesome guide to help us out. It's from a site called Open Educational Resources, Open Source Physics at Singapore, and it's like they've blended education and tech in a really cool way.
Yeah, it's amazing how they break down this whole process into 23 steps. It's almost like a recipe anyone can follow to create an iOS app. And they even go beyond just telling you what to do. Like they explain the why behind each step, which is super helpful, especially if you're just starting out.
That's so important, right? Like you don't just want to blindly follow instructions. You want to understand what you're doing and why it matters. So walk me through some of these steps. I see they mention building the app in Xcode, which I know is Apple's development environment, but then they talk about encountering deprecation errors. What are those? Is that like a common thing newbie developers would run into?
Oh yeah, deprecation errors are like a fact of life in software development. Think of it this way. Technology is always evolving, right? So older code or tools can become outdated, and deprecation errors are basically like little flags saying, hey, this stuff is old news, use the latest and greatest instead.
So it's not like a complete roadblock, more like a detour sign pointing you to a better route.
Exactly. It's just a sign that things have moved on, and you should too.
Okay, so we've built our app in Xcode, hopefully without too many deprecation detours. What's next on the menu?
Well, the guide has you connect a physical iOS device, like your iPhone or iPad. This is where things get really exciting because you actually get to see your app come to life on a real device.
I bet that's a cool feeling, seeing your work on an actual phone or tablet. The guide also mentions something about choosing a development team for code signing. Can you break that down for us? What's code signing all about?
So code signing is basically like Apple's way of saying, yep, this app is legit and it hasn't been messed with. It's like a digital signature that verifies your identity as a developer and makes sure the app hasn't been tampered with. It's all about security and keeping the App Store a trustworthy place.
So it's like a stamp of approval from Apple saying this app is good to go. And I noticed the guide gets super specific, like saying to set the code signing identity to iPhone developer instead of distribution.
Yeah, those details are crucial, especially for beginners. Choosing the wrong setting can lead to all sorts of headaches and errors, and you might end up banging your head against the wall trying to figure out why your app isn't working.
It sounds like they're really trying to anticipate those little hiccups that a newbie might encounter. It's almost like they're holding your hand through the process.
Exactly. They want to make sure you succeed, and they're not leaving anything to chance.
That's awesome. Now, there's another term they mention, provisioning settings. What are those all about?
Provisioning settings. Think of those as the bouncers at the door of your app. They control which devices are allowed to install and run your app.
So if you mess up those settings, it's like having a bunch of bouncers turning away potential users at the door.
That's a fun way to think about it. And yeah, if those settings aren't right, your app might not work on certain devices, or it might not even be installable at all.
I'm starting to see why this guide is so detailed. They're not just throwing instructions at you, they're really explaining the logic behind each step.
Right, it's like they're giving you the why along with the how, so you actually understand what you're doing.
And that's going to be super empowering, especially if you're new to app development.
It is. It takes away a lot of the mystery and makes the whole process seem less intimidating.
Speaking of potential roadblocks, the guide also mentions the possibility of running into conflicting provisioning settings issues.
Oh yeah, those can be tricky. It's basically when your app's credentials and permissions don't quite match up with what the device is expecting. And it's like the device is saying, nope, not letting this app in.
So it's kind of like showing up at a fancy party with the wrong invitation. No matter how nicely you ask, the bouncer's not going to let you in.
Exactly. And just like with those code signing settings, getting those provisioning settings right can save you a lot of frustration down the road.
Okay, so we've built the app, tackled code signing, and hopefully avoided any provisioning pitfalls. What's the next big milestone in our app development journey?
Well, now it's time to package your app and get it ready for the App Store. This involves archiving it and creating something called an IPA file, which is basically like putting your app in a nice little box with a bow on top.
Okay, so we're getting our app all dressed up and ready for its big debut. What's next?
Well, before you can even think about launching your app, you need to create an app listing in Apple's iTunes Connect. This is where you really start thinking about your app's identity and how you want to present it to the world.
So this is where you come up with the catchy app name. Write the description and choose those screenshots that are going to make people want to download your app.
Yep, it's all about marketing and making your app stand out in the crowded app store.
And I see the guide even provides a direct link to iTunes Connect, https://itunesconnect.apple.com. That's handy.
It is. They're making it super easy for you to find the right place and get started.
Now, I have to ask about something I saw in the guide. It mentions a USD 99 developer cost. That's a detail that suddenly makes this whole app building adventure feel very real, you know?
Yeah, that's an annual fee to become an Apple developer, and it basically gives you access to all their development tools, resources, and of course the ability to publish your apps on the App Store.
So it's like paying a membership fee to join the exclusive club of iOS app developers.
You could say that, but it's also an investment.
Yeah.
You're paying for access to a massive audience and a platform that's known for quality apps.
It makes you realize that this isn't just a hobby, it's a serious business. But hey, if you're passionate about building apps, that $99 is probably a small price to pay.
Right. Especially when you consider the potential rewards.
Okay, so we've built the app, dealt with code signing, navigated iTunes Connect, and even faced the reality of that developer fee. What's next? Are we ready to release our app into the wild?
Almost. There are still a few more things to cover, but we're getting close. The guide talks about some pretty specific technical details like bundle IDs and provisioning profiles, which we'll dive into next time.
Ooh, those sound intriguing.
They are. But let's save those for our next deep dive session.
For now, let's just bask in the feeling of having come this far. We've learned so much already, and we're well on our way to building our very own iOS app.
It's amazing what you can accomplish when you break down a seemingly complex process into manageable steps.
Absolutely. And having a clear, well-explained guide like this one makes all the difference.
So until next time, keep those app ideas brewing.
We'll be back soon to explore those technical tidbits and get you even closer to launching your app dream into the world. Okay, so we're back and ready to tackle those techie terms we mentioned before, bundle IDs and provisioning profiles.
Right. Let's demystify those.
Yeah, because I gotta admit they sound a little intimidating.
They can seem that way, yeah, but once you break them down, they're not that complicated.
Okay, good. So let's start with bundle ID. What is that? Why is it so important?
Well, a bundle ID is basically like a unique fingerprint for your app. It's a string of characters that identifies your app, both on the App Store and within Apple's entire ecosystem.
So no two apps can have the same bundle ID.
Exactly. It's how Apple keeps things organized and makes sure each app has its own space, so to speak.
So it's kind of like a digital birth certificate for your app, giving it a unique identity in this huge sea of apps out there.
I like that analogy. Yeah, it's like a birth certificate for your app.
Yeah. Okay, so the guide mentions registering a bundle ID on the developer page. Is this something you have to do before you even think about publishing your app?
Oh, absolutely. You need to register your bundle ID with Apple to claim it for your app. It's like staking your claim in App Store territory, saying, this bundle ID belongs to my app and nobody else's.
So it's like reserving your app's spot in the App Store universe. What happens if you try to use a bundle ID that's already taken?
Well, Apple's system will flag it, and you won't be able to use it.
Makes sense. You don't want multiple apps with the same ID running around causing confusion.
Exactly. Chaos would ensue.
Okay, so we've got bundle IDs figured out. Now, what about those mysterious provisioning profiles?
Ah, yes, provisioning profiles. These are a bit more involved, but they're essential for testing and distributing your app. Basically, a provisioning profile is a file that links your developer account to your app and specifically to the devices that you want to test it on.
So if I understand this correctly, it's like a VIP pass for your app that says, hey, this app is allowed to run on these specific iPhones or iPads.
That's a perfect way to put it, yeah.
And without it?
Without it, the device will say, nope, not running this, and basically reject your app.
And this all ties back to Apple's emphasis on security and controlling the app ecosystem, right?
Exactly. It's part of Apple's whole approach to maintaining a closed ecosystem where apps are vetted and authorized before they can be installed on people's devices.
So it's kind of a multi-layered security system. You've got code signing, verifying the developer's identity and that the app hasn't been messed with. And then you've got these provisioning profiles controlling which devices can actually run the app.
Yep.
Now, the guide, it doesn't sugarcoat things. It actually mentions that validation might fail if you haven't created the proper application record. What exactly does that mean?
Right. So remember how we talked about creating an app listing in iTunes Connect? Well, that's essentially the application record. If you haven't created that record correctly, or if it's missing some key information, Apple's validation process will catch it and your app won't get approved.
So it's like submitting a passport application with like missing information or a photo that doesn't meet the requirements. You're not going anywhere.
Exactly. Apple has strict guidelines for app submissions, and that validation process is their way of enforcing those standards.
It's good to know they're being thorough, you know? It makes you feel more confident about the apps you download from the App Store.
Oh, absolutely.
It's easy to forget all the work that goes into getting an app out there, all the checks and balances that are in place.
Yeah, there's a whole team of people working behind the scenes to make sure everything runs smoothly.
Speaking of teams, our source really emphasizes the collaborative nature of this whole process.
Yes, they do. And it's great that they highlight all the individuals and organizations involved in this project.
It shows that it's not just one person coding away in isolation, it's a team effort. And that's especially true in the world of open source software, right?
Absolutely. Open source projects thrive on collaboration and shared knowledge.
It's amazing to see how people from all over the world can come together and create something amazing.
It's a testament to the power of the internet and the human spirit of collaboration.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, from bundle IDs and provisioning profiles to the collaborative spirit of app development. But there's one more thing the guide mentions that I'm curious about. It's called the Easy JavaScript Java Simulation Authoring and Modeling Tool. What is that all about?
That sounds interesting. It seems like it might be a tool that makes it easier to create simulations or interactive content, maybe specifically for educational purposes.
Yeah, maybe it's something that simplifies the process of building those kinds of apps. I mean, the name itself suggests that it's supposed to make things easier.
Right. It sounds like it could be a really useful tool for educators or anyone who wants to create engaging learning experiences.
Should we dive into that now, or do you think it deserves its own separate deep dive?
Yeah, I think it might be best to save that for another time. It seems like a pretty meaty topic, and I don't want to rush through it and not do it justice.
Agreed. We can always come back to it later with fresh eyes and really explore it in detail.
Exactly.
So, for now, let's wrap up this part of our deep dive with a quick recap of what we've learned so far. We started by demystifying those essential but often confusing concepts of bundle IDs and provisioning profiles.
And we also highlighted the importance of collaboration in app development, especially in the open source world.
And of course, we stumbled upon that intriguing, easy JavaScript Java simulation authoring and modeling tool, which we've decided to save for a future deep dive.
So stay tuned for more exciting discoveries as we continue exploring this fascinating world of app development.
All right, welcome back to our deep dive, everyone. I feel like we've been on quite a journey exploring all these different aspects of building iOS apps.
We have. It's been pretty fascinating. I mean, from deciphering those technical terms to uncovering that whole collaborative spirit behind app development, it's been a pretty cool exploration.
Yeah, it's amazing how much we've unpacked. We started by breaking down those initially kind of scary but super important concepts like bundle IDs and provisioning profile.
That's like the foundation, the building blocks of getting your app ready for the App Store.
Exactly. I mean, think back to how we talked about a bundle ID being like a unique fingerprint for your app. It's what makes your app stand out from all the others.
And then those provisioning profiles, they're like those VIP passes we were talking about, controlling who gets access to your app.
Yep. All about security and making sure things are running smoothly.
It's all part of Apple's way of keeping things organized and safe for everyone.
And of course, we can't forget about that USD 99 developer fee. It's a reminder that this is a serious business, but also an investment in your app's future. Yeah.
Definitely an investment. But I think what really stood out to me was that that spirit of collaboration we uncovered, especially in the open source world.
Yeah, it's inspiring to see how people are willing to share their knowledge and work together to create something amazing.
Exactly. It's not about competition. It's about community.
And I think our source material really embodied that spirit. They didn't just provide instructions. They celebrated all the people and organizations that contributed to the project.
Absolutely. It was a true testament to the power of open source and the idea that knowledge should be shared freely.
And speaking of knowledge sharing, we can't forget about that intriguing easy JavaScript Java simulation authoring and modeling tool we stumbled upon. It sounds like a powerful tool for educators or anyone who wants to create interactive learning experiences.
Yeah, it definitely piqued my curiosity. I'm really interested in learning more about how it works and what kind of potential it has.
Well, I guess we'll have to save that for another deep dive.
We will, but it's definitely on the list.
All right, so as we wrap up this deep dive, Let's take a moment to reflect on everything we've learned.
What are some of the key takeaways that stand out to you?
Well, for me, it's the realization that building an iOS app isn't this like impossible dream reserved for coding geniuses.
Right. It's more accessible than people might think.
Yeah, with the right resources and guidance, anyone can learn the basics and start creating their own apps.
And it's not just about the technical skills, it's also about creativity, problem solving, and being open to collaboration.
Absolutely. It's about bringing your ideas to life and sharing them with the world.
So I guess the question now is, what kind of app will you create?
What problem will you solve? What story will you tell?
The possibilities are endless, and the tools and resources are out there.
So go for it, dive in, and don't be afraid to ask for help along the way.
There's a whole community of developers and creators out there ready to support and inspire you.
Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey into the world of iOS app development.
It's been a pleasure exploring this with you.
And until next time, happy app building, everyone.